on September 11th, showing up to work that morning. When I got out of the subway, the first tower had already been hit.
Ooh.
And when I looked up, all I saw was like billowing smoke out of the World Trade Center, one of the towers. People were like running all over the street. It was like absolute chaos.
Mm.
To make a long story short, I get to the building that I worked at. The doorman wouldn't let me upstairs.
Mhm.
Instead, he said, well, you can use the phone in the lobby. I'm like, okay, because our cell phones weren't working at the time. Within seconds, the first tower fell, and like all these people swarm into the lobby looking for shelter. Honestly, if I had been minutes prior, I would have been caught in smoke. And I mean, I have pictures of it. It's insane. Not that I took, but aerial views from
Yeah.
that moment. And I'm in this closet with a bunch of strangers. We got pushed into it. I'm frozen. I can't move. I can't speak. This woman comes over to me. She's like, "What's your name?" Which takes me out of that paralyzation mode. I answer her and she says, "Okay, I'm Nancy, and the two of us, we're going to get out of here together."
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Living Room Wisdom, where your story is your glory. I couldn't be more excited to introduce my guest today. I actually was recently on her podcast, The Art of Badassery, but she's just amazing, and I couldn't not share her and her message. This is Jennifer Cassetta, and Jennifer is a highly sought after keynote speaker. She does keynote speaking for global brands, so not just any keynotes. She's also a health and empowerment and nutrition expert. She's a third degree black belt, y'all. A third degree black belt in Hapkido. Did I say that?
Yeah.
Okay, Hapkido, as well as being the best-selling author of The Art of Badassery, which is right behind her. And she has another book coming up called The Art of Badassery Framework. So we're going to obviously hear a little bit more about that. But her work is amazing, and I love how she integrates the mojo and the wisdom of the dojo. Is that correct?
That really is. The
Welcome,
wisdom of the
welcome.
dojo.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you for
so
being
much.
here.
Oh, Patrina, it's such a pleasure. I've been wanting to come into this living room and chat with you and all of your listeners. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to jump in because there's so much. Because I want to start with you sharing a little bit about the moment that you realized that strength was not optional. What does
Oh
that
my
look
God.
like for you?
There's been many, but when I looked back, I think for many of us, you don't realize it when you're going through it, right? When you're in that moment, the pivotal moment, the turning point where your life takes a different route, like you don't really know it at the time. It's only looking back that you're like, "Oh my gosh." That was incredible. So, it's funny. So I'll take you to the moment I realized that. I was in a Brendan Burchard
Hmm.
conference actually in up in NorCal. Let's say it's probably 13-ish years ago. And I had just started speaking on college campuses, doing self-defense and sexual assault awareness for sorority women. I really wanted to up my speaker game. So I went to this his course called World's Greatest Speaker. And he shares his big story with the big arc of how he almost died in a car crash and blah blah blah. And that's how he had the moment.
Yeah.
So he basically had us say, get into a group real fast and, think of a story something that you've been through that was really, really hard on you and then share with your group. He said it more eloquently, obviously. But I was like, hmm. And I've always had this story in my head that like I had a, normal childhood and, had kind of just normal issues. And then all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, oh my God. I almost died in the attacks on the World Trade Center on September 11th. I've been burying this story for all these years because of a couple reasons. One is survivor's guilt. Two
Mhm.
is I was always like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, which is, I guess, related to survivor's guilt. But essentially, when I looked back, I was like, that was the defining moment of my entire career path, life, leadership. It all changed from that day forward. So there's a story if you want the story.
Yeah, and when you tell the story, I would love for our listeners to hear kind of who you were and what that
Mm,
space was you were in prior to September 11th, because that's big. I mean, I think we all remember exactly where we were when that
yeah.
happened. So, who were you before this incident? And then how has that evolved?
That's a really good question and something I've never really shared on a podcast because at the time I was working part-time in this beautiful loft building in a loft in a building 3 blocks south of the World Trade Center for this couple who owned it, and I was going to be their marketing person for events. So I wanted to get into events because prior to that, I had been kind of trying to feel my way. It was only a couple of years out of college, so I had a couple of jobs, like being an assistant to this person or that person. But what I loved was being in nightclubs. So I bartended in nightclubs. I was a hostessing in restaurants, serving in restaurants. Like I just loved hospitality. I loved all of that. And then wound up that my brother owned a nightclub at the time. And I worked my way up to bartender. So I'd be up till 4 in the morning. At the time, if you can believe it or not, I smoked
Wow.
cigarettes. I was
That's
like
a New
doing
York
shots.
thing. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, that was my life.
Yeah.
And in the daytime, I would get up and go to martial arts, do my
Wow.
martial arts thing because I loved it. Anyway, I didn't necessarily have a big vision for my life at that time. I really didn't. So there I am on September 11th, showing up to work that morning. When I got out of the subway, the first tower had already been hit. And when I looked up, all I saw was like billowing smoke out of the World Trade Center, one of the towers. People were like running all over the street. It was like absolute chaos. To make a long story short, I get to the building that I worked at. The doorman wouldn't let me upstairs.
Mhm.
Instead, he said, "Well, you can use the phone in the lobby." I'm like, "Okay," because our cell phones weren't working at the time. So I called my mom because I figured she'd be worried. And
Yeah.
within seconds, the first tower fell. And like all these people swarm into the lobby looking for shelter. Honestly, if I had been minutes prior, I would have been caught in that smoke. And I mean, I have pictures of it. It's insane. Not that I took, but aerial views from
Yeah.
that moment. I'm in this closet with a bunch of strangers. We got pushed into it. I'm frozen. I can't move. I can't speak. This woman comes over to me. She's like, "What's your name?" Which takes me out of that paralyzation mode. I answer her and she says, "Okay, I'm Nancy, and the two of us, we're going to get out of here together."
Wow.
So Nancy and I, yeah, it was like still like brings me to tears when I think of her because otherwise I don't know where I would have gone or
Yes.
what I would have done. We were
Mm.
all evacuated from that building, so we ran out into the street, into the ashes, and eventually, like we made it from building to building to building, and eventually I had the idea to take Nancy to the dojo, the martial arts school that I had been training at prior. Then became this metaphor for my life. It moved me forward. All I wanted to do in the days, months, and years after that was like go to the dojo where I was starting to feel more strong in my body, strong in my mind, safe psychologically and physically, and more powerful from the inside out. And from there, it's the rest is history.
That's beautiful. That's so profound. I think that it really confirms the fact that those moments in our life that feel the hardest sometimes are the ones that define us and become the catalyst for who we're really here to become. And that's really the reason why this podcast is where your story is your glory, because I do believe that we should spotlight more of the raw, real stories and the journeys that people are taking. We really only see the after, right? You don't see the before. Sometimes you see the before, sometimes you see the after, or all the time you see the after, but we don't often see the journey in between, the
Right.
feelings, the self-doubt, the fears, the challenges that we've had to overcome. And so I find that so inspiring, but I would also love for you to expand on how that turned into essentially your framework. You're utilizing the philosophies and the guide of martial arts to now deliver your keynotes and to work with I always say women, but potentially not women, but to work with your client. And so tell us how that looks in regard to how it relates with the martial arts.
Absolutely. I mean, I can get into the framework for you. I just have to say that after telling that story so many times, you kind of get to a point where you're like, that was just the first takedown or setback, right?
Yeah.
There's been so many since.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you're listening to a speaker on a podcast or on a stage and they're, sharing the story from like 25 years ago, just
Mhm.
know like that's not it, right? That's
Yeah.
not the
But
only thing.
it gives us the tools. That's the story that gave us the tools to then navigate the rest of
Mm,
the challenges that came after, right? Would you agree with
right.
that? It's
Oh,
like if we
100%.
hadn't had this one really horrible experience, then we wouldn't have developed our resilience, our creativity, our like tenacity, and our belief in ourselves, is what I'll say, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there was 10 years where I was at that dojo as often as possible, which sometimes was most times was 7 days a week,
Yeah.
6 days a week. What turned into from taking one class would be like staying there for hours. And eventually I said, well, I was out of work right after September 11th. So I said, like, what can I do to pay the
Mhm.
bills and do this? First, I started back in a nightclub, but then I had the idea to become a personal trainer. So
Mm.
that just felt easy and like, okay, I can help other people feel strong, right? But then as the years went on, I started to really go deeper. And I was like, well, what else is going on here? Specifically in the health world, right? Clients were coming to me, they wanted to lose weight. That was like the normal thing back then, today too, I'm sure. But I started to realize that some people would take my advice right away, right? Because then I went back to school, sorry, to become a health coach, and then later back to school to become a nutritionist. And I'm like, why are there some people that just take the prescription? They're like, do this workout, eat this, right? And get the results. And then there was a lot of other people that no matter what you shared with them, no matter what you taught them, no matter what you said to do, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't
Mhm.
get the results.
Mhm.
So I started to really get into mindset work and personal development and personal growth. And I was like walking on the hot coals at Tony Robbins events and
Same.
going to landmark. Oh yeah, I did it all. And this was like in my 20s when I had no money. Like I would put things on like a credit card at the seminar and be like, here you go, and I'll figure out how to pay it off. And I did, right? That was what was kind of going on in the background
Mhm.
throughout these, last, I guess the first 10 years of that work. So then after 10 years, I got my third degree black belt in Hapkido and moved to Los Angeles. And that's when I knew I was like, I just want to take this to a broader stage. Instead of the one-to-one, how can
Mhm.
I now share this message with one-to-many? And I
Mhm.
really wanted to help people become more strong, safe, and powerful from the inside out, right?
Yes.
Mindset, spirit work, all of that before or, as you're working on your biceps.
I absolutely adore that. And partially because it's so aligned with my beliefs, right? Everything that
Yeah.
I do is kind of as is above is below. So the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, the psychological, right? All of that needs to be cultivated and worked on, right? As well
Yeah.
as the more grounded, like strategic action stuff, the physical, as you said. And so
Mhm.
I love the way that you tie that together. What I
Mhm.
want to point out is that I also am seeing a trend in my interviews of when these defining moments happen, that we all have something we lean into that becomes our refuge, right? So for
I
you, it
love
was martial arts. For me, it was yoga. For some
that.
people, they dive headfirst into maybe therapy or the personal development or whatever. So I have two questions.
Yeah.
How long would you say it took you being in that bubble, right? Where you're just all about the martial arts, just diving in, losing yourself in this, to the awakening moment, we'll call it, where you realize, like, oh, this is actually who I'm here to be and what I'm here to teach.
Great question. Gosh, I always had this vision that I knew I was meant for more.
Hmm.
And this is by no means to say anything out there to anyone who's a personal trainer, because I think it's great work. I think
Right.
it's so important. But when I was doing it, I knew that that wasn't it, a step on the path,
Hmm.
right? And everything I added, I felt the same about. Even when I got my master's in nutrition and I'm like doing nutrition counseling, I knew it wasn't
The
it,
thing,
I wish I knew it back then because I spent a hell of a lot money, a lot of money
of course.
on my master's degree that I'm still paying off.
She,
But I knew there was big. So basically, when I went to these Tony Robbins things, I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to do. Even if it was like a sliver of the impact that he had on his audience, right? Like on the amount I mean, he
Mhm.
reaches millions of people. If I can reach a percentage of those people and help people feel more strong, more safe, more powerful,
Hmm.
that's what I want to do. So over time, I started to, like I said, get to the point where I was speaking on college campuses, but then I wanted to speak to people my age, right? I wanted to
Right.
speak to my peers. So that became like corporate wellness stuff. And eventually I came up with the idea of the art of badassery. And I
Love
can't
it.
really remember. Yeah, thank you. I do know kind of where the words that kept coming up.
Hmm.
This is something for everyone to kind of, think about is like, what do people tell you about yourself?
Hmm.
Right? Like, and
Yeah.
is there a common theme?
Hmm.
Because people kept saying to me, and again, I hope this doesn't sound too bragging,
Yeah.
braggart, is that a
Never,
word?
never here.
Okay. You're like, Jen, either that's so badass that you do
Yes.
martial arts or you're such a badass. Like the word
Hmm.
just kept coming up
Hmm.
again and again and again. Finally, I said, let me lean into this.
Yep.
And I thought, well, the art of plays on the martial arts.
Yes.
And also it just makes the movement like so much bigger, and then came up with the framework. So I had my first big keynote in 2018, giving this early version of the Art of Badassery as a keynote. But then as I sat down to write the book in 2020, right in the pandemic,
Time.
that's when it started to come to me as this big seven belt framework, each color coded, with a lesson that kind of tied to my martial arts training along the way. So the lesson that you learn on the mat that translates to lessons in life.
Yes, it's so stunning. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I remember when we met on a yacht at an event, and you were one of the speakers. And I remember just connecting so deeply with your message, but also being so incredibly, as a speaker myself, so incredibly impressed by the structure of your talk and how the through line of the martial arts came in. And I was like, yeah, she's a badass. So I could totally see how the art of badassery came about. So tell everyone then about how the metaphor of the belt relates or translates into our real lives in regard to like our mental or spiritual growth,
Yeah.
and maybe feelings of fear, grief, shame, right? And how you utilize that.
Absolutely. So that's chapter one and two. So essentially chapter one is called Embrace the Suck, and it's the white belt chapter.
Love it.
Yeah, on the mat, like it sucks in the beginning. You're first of all like walking into this dojo where all these people are serious badasses. You're this lowly little white belt. You have to bow to everybody that has a higher belt than you, which is everybody. You're getting on a mat, you're doing things with your body that hurt, you're sore, you're tired, and now you're getting punched and kicked at by people double your size. Like it's scary stuff. It sucks, but at the same time, you know that every push-up you do, every sit-up you do, um, every class that you complete, you are becoming stronger and more resilient because of it. So
Mm,
it's the same in life.
mm.
Just like you said, these setbacks are really set ups for the next version of you. And I truly believe that.
I love this white belt like metaphor because and what I think I'm fascinated by is that it's kind of your first step or your first chapter. I believe that's a big block. We all have different beliefs, different stories we have about ourselves that keep us from moving forward, being successful, doing the thing. And I always say that the first step is awareness, like knowing that it's a block and then kind of going deeper into it. But what you're saying is like put yourself in a position to suck. Like
Yeah,
put yourself in a room where you're not the smartest, the not the right. And so like almost like seek out opportunities to not be the best, to be the best, right? And
I
then
love
learn
that.
from that. That's a level of vulnerability that is like uncomfortable for most people. That is
You know,
brilliant.
well, that's not even part of the chapter, but I should have.
That's the next book.
Yeah, exactly. So what I do is have people actually create their greatest shits list. So instead of
Ooh.
you have your hits list, right?
Mm,
The greatest things you've done, and those are really important to remind you how badass you are. You've done hard things in the past, you've done successful things in the past, you'll do them again.
mm,
But let's look at your shits list because in there you'll
mm.
find gold. You'll find that you've built resilience, grit, grace, humility, um, leadership skills, right? All of these persistence, perseverance, these
Uh-huh.
things that you really will need going forward because
Yes.
life is going to suck again and it's going to test you over and over and over again. Like I said in the
Mm,
beginning, September 11th was like, feels like ancient history. I've had loads of other takedowns since then that I had to lean on all of these, what I call in the book secret weapons
yes.
to use to get me through them.
I really like that. You know, you always hear in the business world, you want to be the least smart person in the room, like surround yourself by smart people and all of that. But I've just never heard it, whether you said it or not. What I heard was, that vulnerability and actually being in positions to suck. And it's funny because people will often ask me like, you're so resilient and you're so confident and you're so this and I'm like, yeah, but I believe that's actually at the core of how I have become who I am today because I don't have a problem leaning into my fear and leaning into the discomfort and changing shit up, completely blowing up things and recreating it from scratch and being okay with the failures. And so it really does. And I've never actually done martial arts. I had two of my kids took martial arts, and I was always so fascinated by it. But I guess what I want to find out from you then is during your time in the dojo, and then since developing this framework and working with clients and things, what would be a belief that you had prior to really diving into these philosophies and this way of being that you had to let go of? And how has that shifted your life?
I am right there. I'm just going to share this because this has been my biggest block,
Mm,
at least the ones I could see,
right.
has been like if you look at me on paper, if you look at me on social media,
Mm,
and again, the feedback I get, like, oh my God, Jen, you're busy, you're so successful. My husband's friends will tell him, like, wow, Jen must be killing it. She must be making so much money, etc. Right?
yeah.
And sure, it looks like that. And yes, I have had success,
Mm-hmm.
but my biggest block has been in the financial,
Mm-hmm.
right, section. And obviously, how you do one thing, I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah.
I believe that if how you
Yeah.
do one thing is out, but that belief spread into other areas of my life, obviously. This lack, right? And I
Mm,
can go trace it back. I can trace it back to my mom and dad fighting over money, blah, 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 blah. What I did, what I have let go. Well, I've let go of that, but by creating
yes.
the opposite of that. I've
Mm-hmm.
created and this is in my next book
Ah,
coming up. The next book is called Secrets of the Sensei, actually.
ooh,
Protect your peace and power when the world is on fire.
love it.
And in the second chapter there, I just talk about building your resilience reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
The reservoir is like feeling safe, feeling secure. If any, I grew up an hour north of New York City, so there was all these reservoirs that the city would drink from, right? That was like the drinking water for New York. And there were times of drought where you would see the level of the water be down, down, down. And I remember as a kid being like weirdly tuned into it.
Yeah.
And you would feel like this lack, this like, "Ugh, what are people going to do? You know, like there's not going to be enough water to drink." And then when they were full, you would kind of just like feel like, ah, safe, secure, everything's good, like, right? And you have this thing. So I started to develop that feeling
Hmm.
during my meditations, during my, sacred morning routines of this reservoir being full all the time. I didn't have to operate from lack anymore. And
Hmm.
I'm telling you, it has changed my life in the last year, like more than the last 20 doing the work.
Yeah. I love
I don't
it.
know if that really answered your question, but I feel that's what I just wanted to share.
Well, it sounds like the disempowering story or the belief is that there was not enough. And so
There's
that
not going to
kept
be
you in,
enough. There,
right.
there's just never not going to be, it's never going to work. I don't have
Hmm.
enough skills. I don't have what it takes. I'm not worthy. Like
Yes.
all of that,
Yes.
how it, manifested was money, but below the surface was all of this like lack, 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 very low reservoir, like
Yes.
low levels. Um,
Scarcity, self-doubt, all of that.
and I
Yeah.
had to fill that up. And again, when I shared my story earlier, like I'm at the Tony Robbins seminars, I'm doing all
Right.
this work, I'm
Yes.
doing the work, as they say,
Yes.
but it was like I had to go deeper. I had
Hmm.
to get underneath just the mindset, the words, the affirmations. I did all that. I
Hmm.
had to go deeper and fill up my reservoir with like
Yes.
the feeling of
Yes.
safety and security.
I think there's also an experience piece here. And I know that I think it's a common thread that most of us that have really dived deep into our spiritual and personal development and who have invested, God, hundreds of thousands of dollars in these programs and seminars. And I mean, same as you, walked on the coals, went to Fiji with Tony, jumped off the
Me
big,
too.
huge power pole. Did you really?
Yes.
Life, okay. Oh my God. I wonder if we were at the same one. That would be hilarious. But
I have a picture. I have pictures from it.
yeah, but I think that the common thread I see with our architect type of woman
Mm,
is that it well, there's a couple things I want to put forth. One is that none of us have become this overnight. None of us, right?
hmm
Like my journey is like 30 something years in the making, right?
hmm
But people
Yeah.
see the overnight, or once they discover you, it's like, oh, she just overnight came out of nowhere. Like, no, there was a lot of development. But I think the second part of that is that when it comes specific to the money part, right? Living in that story of scarcity or having the experience of scarcity and wanting so badly to break through that, part of the way because I've had the same experience and sometimes still struggle with scarcity around money. Um,
Sure.
and I have to remind myself, which is why I love my framework and why I'm sure you fall into your framework, is because it keeps us accountable to our own frameworks and what we know, as opposed to what our sneaky little bullshit systems
Mhm.
sometimes will tell us, right? Our internal systems. But actually making the investments, the
Mhm.
magic of making the investments, like you're looking at your bank account that says negative blah blah blah, and yet you're investing in a program that's 5, 10, $15,000. I think that those are the
Mm.
moments where we start to build that self-confidence, where we start to really build the reservoir, to use your words, of
Mhm.
abundance that we can
Yeah.
tap into later, where we can be like, oh, here's proof. I didn't have this to do, but look at all of the mindset, the spirituality, the connections, the personal growth, the business success, all these things that have come from me just jumping off that ledge and figuring
Mhm.
out how to make that shit happen.
Completely. And I did it like this before because I can see myself at Unleash the Power Within,
Yeah,
Tony's first the like the
entry
beginner
point.
program.
Yeah.
And when they do the big sell back then
Hmm.
for Master University, it was $10,000.
Hmm.
Personal trainer living in Chinatown, literally getting paid sometimes in cash
Hmm.
by my clients, like had no reserves.
Yes.
And I just remember going like almost
Yeah.
like mesmerized with my credit card, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
going. Here
Yeah,
you go. I don't know
yeah,
how, because you still had to get to Fiji. You still had to put yourself up in California. You still had to do all these things. And I
exactly.
just said, like, I will make it happen. And
Exactly. That's the voice. That is the
yeah,
voice that the listeners need to hear and tune into. But not
yeah,
only tune into it, but take action on it. Because
right.
I remember it's like hearing your experience reminds me of my own experience because I had already been to so many different personal development things. And I'm like, now I'm going to the guru, right?
Yeah.
So interestingly, I was actually expecting his offer to be a lot higher.
Okay.
So my mindset, even though I didn't have it, I didn't even have a credit card to put it on at the time, right? I didn't. And so my mindset was like when he announced the program and announced the pricing, and this really speaks to like high-end offers, right? Because we
Yeah.
don't see ourselves the way other people see us and we don't always fully own our value. But this is when I learned about higher priced offers as opposed to underselling yourself. I was
Yeah.
easily expecting his offer to be like $40,000. So when I heard
Wow.
10,000, I'm like, in my mind, I was like, I can't not do this. So how are
Yeah.
we going to do? How are we going to make this happen? And I moved
Mm.
forward. And I just
Wow.
ended up in that rabbit hole, as I'm sure you did for the next 2, 3 years, right? Brilliant. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yes. But
So,
again, I find myself there again, just in different ways. Like
yes,
I'm ready for this up leveling of my whole brand, my website, all of it. And I'm like, okay, mentally, I just have to prepare myself because I'm getting the quotes coming in. And,
of
you know,
course.
I know it's a lot of money to spend
Yes.
on faith,
Right.
on the faith in yourself, knowing that by doing this, you're investing
Mm-hmm.
not just in your website, not just your business, but in your life, like in your
Yes.
future.
Yeah. I'm seeing right now, my word right now is audacity. I feel
Love
like I
it.
have a level of audacity that I've never had before. I've always been a
Mm.
badass, which is why we connected. But
Right.
this level of audacity right now that, some people will look at audacity as how dare you think you can X, Y, and Z, or how dare you do. For me, I have the opposite mindset right now. And my messaging that I'm telling myself is how dare you not be visible? How dare you not ask for this, and that? How dare you not step into the rooms that you know you're meant to be in? And
Hmm.
oh my gosh, it's such a simple tweak, but so powerful. So with that
That,
said, I want to
yeah.
find out you said you're up leveling. So what's the
Hmm.
vision? What are we working to right now? The scary, like, I'm doing this thing.
Well, since in your framework, one of your levels, if I remember correctly, is about declaration. So I'm currently writing a New York Times bestseller. Um, and and I feel it. Like I prepare myself as I sit down to the
Mm,
keyboard, like knowing that that's what I'm writing,
mm,
versus just, oh, I have to get this done.
yeah.
And I knew, even backing up, like I knew I would sell it to a top 5 publisher.
Mm,
I didn't have any proof of that. I just knew. I
okay.
knew that it would happen. And guess what? I did. I
Yeah.
only got one offer.
Love it.
One offer, the rest were no's.
Yeah.
Some had interest, but the rest were no's.
Yeah.
All you need is one yes.
Exactly.
And for sure, I'm under the Penguin brand now.
Oh,
So I, so all of it is like this, like, I just feel like I'm notching up, up, up. But
mm,
the vision is about reaching more people. I
yeah.
don't care that I had a smaller publisher the first time. It allowed me to reach more people.
Mm,
Um, so if I can reach more people to help more people feel this time more resilient, more grounded, and more sturdy in times of turbulence, if I can help them feel more control of their destiny in
mm,
times of uncertainty, I think what we're going through right now in the country and the world is very dark.
yeah.
I'm not pleased about it, and I'm constantly speaking to myself in a way that I need,
Mm,
right? And I'm like writing this book for me right now
yeah.
too, because I cannot let a person or a administration or a group of people steal my joy and my future from me. I'm not going to let them do that. And I
Absolutely.
don't want anyone else to allow that as well. So these are the tools, the secrets from the sensei, the ancient teachers
Mhm.
that always knew how to do this,
Yes.
right? So that's what I'm working towards.
Let's just talk about it as if it's done,
It's
right?
done.
And so it
Yes. And
is.
so it is.
And love it. I love it. And it's so perfect too. It's a great way for us to round out this conversation. So, with that said, for our audience listening, if they're in a state of, when it comes to transition or pivots, sometimes they're forced through maybe getting fired or divorce or things of that nature. And other times it's something that they're yearning for,
Mhm.
but they're not really sure, like they can't even really identify what it is that needs to shift or change. And so for
Yeah.
that person, how can they use the wisdom of the dojo to get unstuck?
I'm going back to the first framework and then the new secrets. So I'm like, which one? Which one? And what pulled me first is the new one. I'll just say it's like follow the feelings of joy, passion, right, to the full extent that you can, that is possible. And you'll
Hmm.
figure out what that thing is. Because I'm going towards when you said like some people just don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
So right? Like you're meant for more. I
Hmm.
think a lot of us feel that way at times in
Hmm.
our lives, or maybe always. Like I know I'm
Yes.
meant for more in this life.
Hmm.
And if you have that feeling, then it's absolutely true. So
Yes.
seek it out and it will find you. Become a magnet for what it is
Hmm.
by doing things that you enjoy, that light you up, that elevate your frequency and vibration so you become an energetic match for whatever is meant to come in.
I like that a lot, actually. I like it because, again, sometimes it's just a little like niggle or a little feeling of
Mhm.
frustration or a feeling of stagnancy that someone has within, and they can't really articulate what it is. They're not sure
Mhm.
what needs to shift. And you're basically saying lean into the things that give you joy. For some people, that could be art. For some people, that could be movement or yoga or, martial arts, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then almost allow that joy space to become the ground which fertilizes the new purpose or the new direction, right? And
Beautiful.
so I think what I'm hearing you say is you really don't have to know necessarily where you're going. You don't have to know what's wrong. You don't have to know what's right. You don't have to know all of the answers. You just want to lean into something that does give you joy and let that experience inform your path. That's what I'm hearing.
I think you nailed it. I mean,
Yeah.
what was I gonna say? How I used to operate
Mm.
was more like, okay, I'm gonna set these yearly goals and this has to happen, and this has to happen, this has to happen. And it was like very linear.
Uh-huh.
And since I've let go of that linear and just ha and hold this very beautiful vision of my future
Yes.
without the timelines attached
Mhm.
necessarily, like,
Mhm.
look, it would be nice for certain things to happen on your timeline, but
Mhm.
if you can let go and find more joy and peace and power in the process,
Mhm.
sometimes things speed up for you.
Mhm.
Sometimes things show up quicker and even better than you thought from
Yeah.
your linear goal timeline. Does that make
Yes,
sense?
and this is what I call alignment. This is
Mm,
what I call alignment. When we are aligned with ourselves, the truth of who we are, right? The truth of what we desire and what brings us joy and all of these things, then I think energetically we're a mismatch to anything that's not aligned with that energy. And so it does speed up. And then also just having this open mind. Again, I love structure too. I love structure, and I've cultivated this ability to not have to know all the answers because sometimes the path is way bigger and way better than I ever could have even imagined. So,
exactly.
so I think
Exactly. And
oftentimes, sorry, go ahead.
well, no, when you were saying the alignment and you attract things, but
Yeah.
also you repel a lot of things. So
Uh-huh.
things start to fall away at first and people freak out because it's like, wait, I didn't mean for my marriage to crumble or my job to get, to get fired and all this. I didn't mean for that to happen. And
Right.
it's like, trust the process.
Yep. Exactly. And I just think that one last thing that I'll add is that a lot of times when people are feeling dissatisfied or frustrated or in that space, they feel like they have to step into something completely different. And you
Mm,
don't. I think society kind of tells us you have to be this or you have to be that. And there's not really a lot of space in between to cultivate. And so I
mhm,
just want you to give yourself permission, for those listening today, to cultivate the next. You don't have to know right now. If you have a passion for art, it doesn't mean you have to go make that a new career. It could be a hobby. Like, I feel like in these days that we live in, you can't have a hobby. Like, you've got to either be corporate or an entrepreneur, or like, but you can be a dualpreneur. You can, have your career and then have these hobbies that you become really good at and maybe even teach, but not everything has to be this like set thing.
right.
It's so gross to me
Right.
sometimes. I don't know. I'm like, I just went off on a totally separate tangent, but I'm
No, it's
obviously very
related.
passionate. Yeah, I'm passionate about it. And I just believe that people's lives, our lives are short. We think we have all the
Yes,
time in the world and we just don't. And so anything that's getting in the way of your joy, your fulfillment, your happiness on a daily basis, you need to figure out how to shift that.
absolutely. And you went through that firsthand, so you
Many times.
know, well,
Yeah.
the life is short part.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, this has been amazing. And I know we were trying to get together in studio and that didn't work out. So maybe one day we'll have to do a redo in studio, but this was super
Absolutely.
juicy. I'm so grateful for you. Is there anything else you'd like to share on our way to ending our conversation here today?
I love to hear from folks. So if
Yeah.
you have a question about what we talked about, let us know. If you have a comment or we just want to share a story of how some of these things from either of our frameworks have changed your life, it's always so good to hear.
Yeah.
You can find me on Instagram at Jen Cassetta or my website at jennifercassetta.com.
Thank you so much for your generous heart and for this conversation. For those of you listening today, thanks for joining us again here in the living room, the magic living room. And we'll see you again next week, same time, same channel. I hope you have a wonderful life and a wonderful day. We'll see you next time. Bye.